is John Ashcroft giving a press briefing outside the Pentagon on September 19th, 2001. It's not a very long video.
Mr. Attorney General, can you tell us, I obviously want to hear your reflections on seeing the building, but at this point on the investigation, can you tell us if you've made any progress at all in discovering what the source of the money was for the hijackers?
Let me first say that this tangled, charred situation is one that has been a difficult work environment for heroic individuals who have been doing an outstanding job of coordinating their effort and working together. I want to thank those individuals who, without regard in many instances to their own safety and security, and certainly working through fatigue and through discomfort in very, very serious conditions, have done a wonderful job.
Let me fill you in on what the intelligence services, domestically anyway, had regarding perpetrators of the planes operation known as the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks. In that, during the attacks, the FBI and the CIA knew, as well as the NSA, they were the first to know about these people before anybody that we know of, knew the names, knew what flights they were on. Now, the FBI was at Dulles Airport, where Flight 11 and 175 took out of. During the afternoon, Ed Nelson, who was a supervisor for security there, I think it was Argenbright, basically said in an interview with Joseph Trento, Joe and Susan Trento, he told them that the FBI was already at his office, telling them that watching the video of the security cameras that were at the checkpoints. Now, we haven't had video ourselves, but Ed Nelson confirms that they do have video of these hijackers. Now, no one, I don't think, has filed a FOIA yet regarding Dulles that I know of. Logan, not Dulles, but Dulles, we have video. In fact, I'm in possession of extra video as well as DJ Thermal Detonator that the public hasn't seen. And if you go to DJ Thermal Detonator's blog, Skeptics versus 9/11 Truth, you can actually see the additional videos. He also uses them in his films. So I would take a look at over there. Become a patron to his account anyway. You'll get stuff that you have never seen before. As DJ Thermal Detonator, I always marvel at his ability to get primary source documentation, whether it's newspapers or video. I thought I was good, but geez. Anyway, the intelligence services knew about these guys. Now, the only thing is that what they know before the attacks. I don't think they knew much of anything. I just think they knew that an attack was coming, but they didn't know who, what, when, where, and why, right? So it's not like, Ashcroft may not even know. And, he's on a need-to-know basis, just like George Bush or Dick Cheney or Rumsfeld. These are public figures. Do you think you want them to know specifics where they could fucking slip up, even if they're a brilliant legal mind like Dick Cheney is or Rumsfeld? No. You don't want them to know specifics. And I don't think they did know. I think they knew an attack was coming. That's for sure. But when it happened, Bush's remarks in that school was genuine. He's like, oh, shit. It really fucking did happen today. But it wasn't like they didn't know that there was a threat to the airline industry by bin Laden, Al Qaeda, and Islamic fundamentalist groups. The conspiracy, the real conspiracy, is that they had enough intelligence to basically, shy away from these attacks. These attacks were easy to stop. All they had to do was act on the intelligence. And there was a lot of it. Now, again, specifics, yes. What they could have done was in the years prior to 9/11, made stricter security measures on these airplanes. In other words, cockpit doors reinforced, cockpit keys not on the first class attendant, stricter immigration application measures where they have to have a face-to-face meeting. None of these hijackers had a face-to-face meeting except for one. That was it. These guys got passed right through, even when their applications were incomplete. The Jeddah office, which is based in Saudi Arabia, U.S. Jeddah office, basically allowed for these applications to be approved. And the person in charge of that was Shayna Steiger. And I did a whole podcast on that. So, listen, I'm not going to fault the intelligence services for not knowing specifics, because that's really fucking hard, unless they're on the ground next door to these people. And we know who was living next door to these people. And it wasn't American intelligence. I'll tell you that. That's Israel and Saudi Arabia. But I'm also speculating that they had specifics too. But if anybody had the who, what, when, where, it would be fucking them. And if you haven't known it, 9/11 basically benefited both of those countries.
My heart goes out to the families. My first response at this site is obviously a response of anger. And then it's a response of sympathy to the victims and to their families. And then
By
it's
the way,
a
the reason why he's looking back is simple. Dover Mortuary is on site, right? And that week, Dover Mortuary and WBLA or something like that, Washington Channel, went on the air and basically said, if you have loved ones on Flight 77, or if you have loved ones that were missing, that are still missing at the Pentagon, please come down with any type of like toothbrushes, shirts, anything that has DNA of their family members or loved ones. And they would go to the Dover Mortuary on site. They would get like a ticket and a badge, a colored badge, and then go into the Dover Mortuary site, where it was, I think, run by, I want to say, I'm not going to have that in time, but if I look at my notes regarding the Pentagon, I believe Dover Mortuary, I have it in front of me. I have this notepad with like names. FBI Special Agent Tara Bloch, who ran the Dover Mortuary. And then you had people like evidence recovery, like Special Agent Tom O'Connor, a member of the Army's Old Guard Regiment, Specialist Dakota Gallivan, who helped to cover remains and clear debris. And then you had others, like, of course, the Assistant Chief James Schwartz, who was in charge of the whole site, and others like Captain Dan Fitch, who's from the TRT squad. I think he is from Arlington as well. So you had people that were, running different areas of the Pentagon, and it coordinated with the federal agency, like FEMA and the FBI. And they ran debris collection, human remains collection, and, recovery of remains, all types of different things. They were well coordinated, more coordinated than New York. So that's why he was looking back when he said families, because they were probably still spilling in, trying to give Dover Mortuary whatever items they had to identify the loved ones that are missing.
Of renewing a commitment to make sure that the network of individuals responsible for this would be brought to justice and would pay the price. And we will intensify in every respect all that we can do, not only to understand and pursue and identify and to punish those individuals who are responsible in the network associated with it, but we will take every possible action to make sure that this kind of injury and assault on America and on its freedom.
Look, for those who, he looks disoriented here. Like he's probably in shock. Here's a building that he's been to many times. And to see it in the destruction that it suffered with the plane crashing into it, he probably was, just taking it all in. I mean, it really is something when you talk with the people who are actually there and you see the destruction. I mean, you must be like, wow, like you speak to the firemen like Leonardo Salvaggio has done, right? Great 9/11 researcher in his own right. We're doing a collab sessions every month where he interviews, people that were actually at the World Trade Center in Shanksville and Pentagon. And he's like, and you could hear in the voice, even now, 3 years, 24 years afterwards, and they're still having a hard time. But so Ashcroft here, this is a genuine response of Ashcroft. And you could see this is not scripted. He's probably shocked at the level of destruction. It pauses every time I pause.
It does not happen again.
Have you identified?
You had another question, which frankly,
I'm happy to restate it, sir. My question is, well, it's actually twofold. How far have you moved along in identifying exactly what happened and who all these people are? And the first question I'd asked you was the source of the funding. Have you made any progress in identifying who was behind the money, how much it took, and how the network was financed?
Good question.
I think it's fair to say that we are making progress on a variety of fronts, including the kinds of some progress on fronts like you mentioned. But for me to begin to discuss particular evidence is premature at this time.
Yeah, you got to figure, hey, listen, you got to figure this too. The CIA was withholding information from the FBI, and so was the NSA. At this point, all the agencies are working together because now they're under the fucking microscope, right? It would look pretty suspicious if the CIA and the NSA were still withholding information. So at this point, information was being free and flow. So that's why the investigation was really flowing at this point, the way it should have been before it even fucking happened, had everybody been on the same page, but they weren't, all right? Now, with this being the case, the CIA, which does overseas work, is probably getting intelligence from, say, the German BFE or the Russian KGB or the Afghan security services or the Egyptian SSI. And they're probably getting intelligence saying, "Hey, there's a connection here. There's a connection here. Who knows?" But everybody is working together now because the attacks happened and they're like, "Oh shit, we better get something done and we better produce, or else we're not going to get that budget at the annual year where we have to go before a subcommittee where you beg and grovel at how the intelligence services were underwhelmed and understaffed and we need more money." That's exactly what the CIA and the FBI basically did. Whereas before 9/11, they had enough intelligence to where had they acted on it or even read it, could have stopped 9/11. Could have. Oh,
Confirm that there were criminal charges filed against some individuals in connection with the investigation in Detroit yesterday.
It's my understanding that criminal charges were filed against individuals who are apprehended in the process of the FBI following
which had
a
nothing to do
series
with
of
9/11.
leads
Detroit 5, I think. Was that
related to these incidents, and the affidavits and materials filed in the court speak for themselves. It is a process that we
It's
are.
funny, I have to pause here. It's funny because Zacharias Moussaoui was under arrest. And if I was a reporter that had known this, that was the first question I'm asking. How's the investigation into Moussaoui going along? They arrested two people, Zacharias Moussaoui and Hussein Al-Attas, in a hotel room in Minnesota. CIA knew about him. And the FBI in Minnesota, Harry Samit, who made the arrest, was trying to obtain a Foreign Intelligence Service warrant to look at his belongings since he's a foreign national. But they didn't get it until after 9/11. Figures.
Pursuing with intensity, and we will continue to pursue with every ounce of our energy to disrupt any potential that we possibly can of any individual or group of individuals or part of any network to similarly inflict additional injury upon the United States or our citizens.
Those individuals are connected to the individuals who perpetrated last week's attacks.
The statements which were made in the documents associated with the arrest and the charges contain all of the statements that we're prepared to make at this time.
So these are your first criminal charges in connection with this case at all. Can you characterize for us how significant these three people may have been in the overall scheme of the plot?
I think it would be far too early to indicate that that this is some sort of major breakthrough in the case. But we are going to pursue every lead, and we will prosecute every infraction. We will intensify efforts. Yesterday I announced that in all U.S. attorneys' offices across the nation, there will be anti-terrorism task forces. It will be their responsibility to identify violators associated with these networks and with terrorist organizations, and any violation will be prosecuted.
Is there evidence that
At this point,
government-
too, let me point out that the FBI, I guess select few, had Ali Muhammad in custody. Ali Muhammad, of course, with the everybody that is a layman in this area regarding 9/11 or the 9/3 bombing knows the name Ali Muhammad, who was a triple agent, an agent of an informant for the CIA, informant for the FBI, and an agent of bin Laden. He adored bin Laden. He respected bin Laden. He spoke of great reverence for him. Knew Omar Abdul Rahman. Ali Muhammad's an Egyptian. Same thing goes for Rahman. He knew Dr. Ayman al-Zawahiri. He knew another Egyptian named Abu Hafs al-Masri, the military commander of Al-Qaeda. He knew Imam al-Sharif, Sayyid Imam al-Sharif, also known as Dr. Fadl, who wrote the jihadist doctrine that Al-Qaeda followed in the early 1990s and throughout 9/11. So he basically was detained, and he was actually giving amazing intelligence to the FBI. But at the same time, after the 9/11 attacks, they asked him, did you have anything to do with training these people? He said, yes, I was training these people how to hijack the aircraft. That's coming from him. Okay, that's coming from him. Is it true? I don't know. The FBI also authorities at the Colorado Supermax, where Ramzi Youssef, Abdul Basit Karim, the mastermind 9/3 bombing, and the co-conspirator of the Pachinko plot, where the 9/11 attacks idea came from, was actually removed from his cell on the afternoon of 9/11 while attacks were, because they were afraid that the attacks came from him. And so they were talking to him about 9/11 attacks. He's like, you guys got me locked up 23 out, 24 hours a day. I can't even get out of my cell. How am I going to get in contact with these people? But he did try and put a hit out of Zacarias Moussaoui. That's interesting. Because Moussaoui was ready to work with the FBI in giving up names of Saudi princesses that had connections with Abu Zubaydah and certain members of Al-Qaeda. But it later turned out in 2006, the CIA said in a military tribunal hearing for Abu Zubaydah, said that they found that he wasn't even a fighter or even Al-Qaeda. And I sort of believe that, because the training camp that he was running, the Kandahar training camp, was not an Al-Qaeda training camp. And he was there. He wasn't in any Al-Qaeda training camp. He may have trained Al-Qaeda at these camps, but it was closed down because of sectarian squabble between the Taliban and Al-Qaeda, right? It was closed. Anyway, so I wonder if that's true with Ali Muhammad. Did he train some of these hijackers on how to hijack the aircraft? It would be very interesting. He had a role in scouring out the security lapses at the embassy bombings in Kenya and Tanzania. Took photographs and sent it to bin Laden. That's interesting, right? Who knows where Ali Muhammad is now? Nobody knows.
May have provided support for those who carried out the hijackings and the attacks.
It's pretty clear that the networks that conduct these kinds of events
There's only one type of
are
event.
harbored and supported, sustained, protected by a variety of foreign governments. And it's time for those governments.
Even Hezbollah or the Abu Dhabi organization never went to martyrdom operations with the plane. They would hijack the plane, but then ask for something in return, like a prisoner exchange for the flight crew and passengers, right? Or for a step down in leadership in these Arab socialist countries, right? These guys, Al-Qaeda, basically went above and beyond. Now, remember, too, according to Ann Sterenson, who wrote the fantastic book Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, there was a split within Al-Qaeda. I believe this regarding the operation itself, 9/11. Very few people knew. But when it got time to basically get close to the date, they had a meeting of the Shura Council, religious hierarchy, and the military council. And they talked about the planes operation. Bin Laden, Dr. Ayman al-Zawahiri, and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed agreed. And there was a huge split that disagreed, because they knew that by doing this, it would suffer the full wrath of the American military. Meanwhile, Al-Qaeda is fighting with the Taliban for control of the country of Afghanistan, and this will get in the way. Obviously, that's exactly what happened. Now, you may think, like, why did bin Laden do this, right? Well, bin Laden wanted to drag the United States into another Soviet-style war in Afghanistan. He got that, but he also got an addition that he didn't think of, was that the American military would invade Iraq at the same time. This would destroy the economy. It helped. Yes, it did. And by the way, what happened? Well, the Taliban took control of the country in 2021, and Al-Qaeda serves in its government. And Iraq, nothing more than a sectarian wasteland. A lot of money wasted. A lot of money. $3 trillion alone for Afghanistan.
To understand with crystal clarity that the United States of America will not tolerate that kind of support for networks that would inflict this kind of damage on the American people.
Does that include Iraq when you speak of implications that are harboring people?
I think the statement speaks for itself.
Just one question on the immigration rule from yesterday, already raising concerns among civil rights groups. Are you already invoking the emergency clause of that order that would allow you to keep detainees indefinitely before they've been charged? Are you already invoking that?
When circumstances require us to use the full force and effect of the order, we will do so. I make no apology. I make no apology for being forceful in our enforcing the law and requiring adherence to the law. This investigation will pursue violators and use every tool available to us to curtail and prevent and disrupt any effort to further inflict this kind of damage on the United States or our citizens.
Mr. Ashcroft, yesterday you said you can't rule out that there may have been a fifth plane. Why can't you rule out, and have you moved any farther to in the investigation in terms of being able to conclude that there was another attack planned?
I would repeat today that we cannot rule out that there may have been additional aircraft targeted. We cannot rule.
Listen, it's not. There's no conspiracy here. Even the joint inquiry, like I said before in the previous video, when we did the, John Ashcroft did a briefing on September 18th. Even the joint inquiry co-chair Bob Graham basically said, yes, we knew about the additional extra hijackings that were going to take place, the second wave. Zacharias Moussaoui even stated that he was chosen for the second wave. He was chosen for the initial wave, then relegated to the second wave of attacks. This fits well with the idea of the Bajinka plot, where they had 12 planes outfitted with bombs and then have them explode. Then 10 operatives would be contacted and they would hijack planes. Imagine 10 planes hijacked, crashing everywhere in continental. What would that do? It would destroy tourism and destroy the flight industry. Nobody would fucking fly. Now, 4 planes, yeah, that really did some damage. But they opened up 3 days later, okay? It was slow going. They suffered millions, tens of millions of dollars the FAA suffered, all right? Tourism was rushed. In the quarter, the ending quarter of 2001 and the beginning quarter of 2002, it took about a year or 16 months to basically get, people comfortable again. But it was quite leery. And then came 2006 and the crash came. So it was a turbulent time economically, just turbulent. Really bad.
That out. And that's the extent of the comment that I would make on that at this time.
Last question, please.
That must have been it. Thank you. Thank you.
Sure. The ACLU held a news conference today expressing concern about civil liberties in the package that you're going to propose. Can you assure people that privacy rights and civil libertarian rights won't be eroded?
I'm deeply concerned about the civil liberties of all Americans. I'm especially concerned about the civil liberties of Arab Americans and Middle Eastern Americans who are patriotic citizens who lament and regret this loss perhaps as keenly or more keenly than any, and whose commitment to the strict enforcement and pursuit of these networks of terror that inflict this kind of injury is as strong as any. We will conduct this effort to investigate and to prosecute with strict regard for every safeguard of the United States Constitution. But we will not fail to use any tool. We will not fail to use any tool that can promote the apprehension, the disruption of the networks that caused these damages and prevent a similar occurrence in the future.
Last question.
What's funny is that, the video ends here, right? I want to talk about this, the civil liberties, because Ashcroft is central to this, right? In 2000, March of 2004 or 2005, 2004, 2000, one of those years, Ashcroft was in the hospital, and he was very sick. And the acting attorney general was James Comey, who later would become the FBI director many years later. That the NSA had proposed an operation that involved the removal of walls to collect data on, foreign nationals and also secretly Americans, right? White House counsel Alberto Gonzales, who would later help to subvert the legislation regarding the safeguarding of civil liberties regarding foreign nationals deemed as terrorists, even if they're born in the United States and arrested abroad, went to the hospital. And basically there was a showdown between Ashcroft's people and the NSA and White House legal counsel, because the White House was on the side of Director Michael Hayden, who would later become the director of the CIA, regarding this operation, regarding this legislation. But Ashcroft, who barely could talk, agreed with Comey that that this would be illegal. Now, that didn't stop the Bush administration to reauthorize the program called Stellar Wind, NSA program called Stellar Wind, where despite the Justice Department's conclusion that it was unlawful, Comey actually threatened to resign because he was not getting support from the White House here. So it was the White House and the NSA and the CIA all on one side. And then you had the State Department, certain members of them anyway, not everybody, people like Secretary of State Colin Powell, the National Security Advisor Condoleezza Rice, the Attorney General John Ashcroft. Well, who was left out of the loop regarding the invasion of Iraq? They were. Who was left out of the loop regarding the elimination of the Geneva Convention for foreign enemy combatants? They were, because their job is to safeguard the civil liberties of people who are either American or not, because it's guaranteed in the Constitution, no matter what, you have basic rights, even if you're not a citizen. But if you're a foreign enemy combatant and you're brought to the United States, which they were in Guantanamo, guess what? Guantanamo is still American soil, technically. It's Cuba, but the American military are there. And that's why they created this legislation in November of 2001. And by doing this, the State Department wrote off with the Department of Defense regarding the implementation of torture, which they would basically, Alberto Gonzales and John Yoo would rewrite the terminology for that. Instead of torture, it's enhanced interrogation techniques, or EIT for short. And what did that do? Jack shit. The CIA lied. They said, it produced results, not according to the CIA's Senate Select Committee. They did a whole report and basically said that none of the information was actionable. So they fucking lied about that too. And by the way, as for the 9/11 defendants, well, 2 now can't be tried. 1, the first one, Ramzi bin al-Shibh, was declared mentally unfit. Amr al-Baluchi was just deemed, his admission was deemed inadmissible because it came from torture. Well, so did Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, Tawfiq bin Attash, Ramzi, and Mustafa al-Hassawi. Their lawyers are chomping at the bit. All right, guys, listen, thank you very much for tuning in to the video. Happy Memorial Day, everybody. Have a great day. Take care. See you in the next video.